All right, we'll get going. There's a roster coming around if you just put your name in the department that you work for. That way, if whoever the powers to be want a roster, they'll have one of who attended. Introductions, my name is Jake Jensen. I work for the Spokane Police Department. I've been there for a little over 20 years. Currently, I'm assigned as a lieutenant, kind of night shift supervisor. So the last 3 years, I was in charge of kind of hiring and training out at our academy, which was a great experience. We take brand new cops and we kind of train them on how to deal with all the obstacles they're going to face when they get there on the street, which kind of segues into today's training, because we're going to talk about giving you folks the skill set to deal with people who are not necessarily being the most, I guess, professional or nice to you because of what you might be doing. In the police world, we get the pleasure of dealing with people calling 911 because obviously there's an emergency occurring, and oftentimes when we show up, some of the halves of that party aren't too excited to see us. So we have to have kind of that ability to de-escalate a situation ideally, and then sometimes if that doesn't work, obviously we have tools to deal with it. You guys don't have those tools, so hopefully the de-escalation piece can just be enough to get you to disengage from that situation and keep yourself safe. So that's the overall goal. As we have this discussion today, and hopefully it'll be interactive, is to keep you guys safe. If anything ever comes to where somebody's going to get physical with you, it's not worth what you're doing. Walk away. Don't get in fist fights with people. If you have to protect yourself, that's one thing, but most of the time we're able to kind of just separate ourselves from the incident. We're going to watch a video. It's an officer in, I think, Springfield, Missouri. There is some foul language in it, so I apologize if anybody is offended. However, it's going to illustrate kind of some points we're going to talk about afterwards. So a backdrop to this call you're going to see. So Officer Rosario, I believe his name is, he responds to a report of a teenage female who has destroyed some things in mom's house. Brother is there as well. When the cop gets there, the teenage girl is gone. She had left, but the brother is still there with the mom, and the brother is just extremely upset that nothing's been done with her sister, and she's getting more and more out of control. And he's going to kind of take some digs at the cop, and we're going to see how the cop responds to it.
Yeah, he always says that badge number and all this thing.
Yeah, first of all, you're not a police officer, right?
I know exactly.
Did you go to law school? Did you go to police officer school? You have a badge? Did you go through the academy?
No.
So do you know the charges or no?
Man, I know
So you went to court once or twice, so all of a sudden now you know the law?
No.
So you went to court once or twice, so all of a sudden now you know the law. First of all, don't tell me how to do my job, all right? I just fucking got here. I just got here. You don't even know me. If you want to do something then, son. Little kid.
He just
Don't.
basically said.
I just got here. Trying to threaten me, son? You call me over here and then you trying to threaten me, son? I'll slap you on some silvers and take you down to county. That's what I got to do, because what you going to do? False arrest? False arrest? You didn't just point that stick at me? You didn't just point that stick at me?
Is your camera on,
Yeah.
motherfucker? Is your camera on?
You see that red dot? It's on. It's on. It's on with your scary ass. Okay, sure. Sure. No, you watch what you say. You watch what you say. You watch what you say, kid. I don't know who you think you're talking to, but first of all, you don't talk to me like that. You understand that? I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you. And all of a sudden, before I even got here, you're like, y'all motherfuckers ain't gonna do shit. I just got here. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck you with your scary ass. I'm right here, motherfucker.
You're a rookie, bitch.
I'm right here.
You're a rookie, bitch.
Shut up.
Bitch, that's police brutality.
Is it?
Yeah, bitch.
Is it? Because you went to...
All right, it actually gets worse. It turns into kind of this street mutual fist fight thing, and we're going to talk about that. So obviously, if that were to happen in Spokane with one of our officers, what do you think would happen to the officer? They would not get promoted. No, they'd probably lose their job, right? So what we talk about here when we get brand new police officers in is there's going to be times when you go to calls where people are going to push your buttons, and you're going to feel the insides kind of turning out as far as maybe some anger bleeding through. And you're going to want to say something, and you're going to maybe feel good in that moment if you were to fire off that little whatever you wanted to say. But in the big scheme of things, it's not going to do you any good. In fact, it can lead down a path to where not only are you going to get disciplined, but more importantly, you might get hurt because you get in this tit-for-tat kind of argument with somebody over something fairly trivial. So in the police world, we talk about emotional intelligence, and really there's 4 pillars to it. And having an understanding of how the 4 pillars interact and kind of play into situations that you might go to where you're dealing with somebody who is mad or upset is kind of key into coming out on top in the end. So the first pillar we're going to talk about is self-awareness. Self-awareness is just simply understanding emotions that kind of enter into your body. So an example, if I'm driving around and I have learned over the years and I have kind of tailored my responses accordingly, but back in my 20s, if I would have had somebody cut me off, what's the emotion that enters my body? Anger, right? I'm upset. I'm PO'd. What might be some of the things that I do as a result of that as a younger person without thinking of the bigger picture? Tailgate. Yeah, maybe cut them back off. Maybe the bird, right? We give a finger to the person. Maybe some gestures where I roll my window down and say some things at them. So that's an example of how emotions can enter your body, and when you're young and inexperienced, you can let that emotion basically turn into an action, but that action can be problematic sometimes because what could happen if, let's say, somebody cuts me off, I cut them off, and we get in this back and forth thing, and I'm giving them the bird, they're giving me the bird, and then what could potentially happen? What's that? Road rage, but like, could an accident? Oh, somebody pulls a gun. Has that ever happened in Spokane in road rage? It's not super like common, but it has happened. And in fact, it's happened where people have gotten shot over simply road rage incidents, complete strangers. And it's bizarre to me, but I can kind of understand it because people let that emotion get into their body and they're not aware of what the result of it can be if they don't control it, right? So the next piece is that management piece. So we understand the emotion comes into the body and we're upset, we're angry, and if I don't have the ability to control how that kind of transpires into some sort of action or like thing that I'm going to do as a result, then I can find myself getting into trouble. So me as a 20-year cop, some of the stuff I've dealt with and seen and kind of gone from A to Z with like consequences of if I take this path, I've learned to kind of tailor and control my emotions that have come into my body. Oh, believe me, there's things I would love to say to some people that get into me a little bit, but I've just learned it's not even worth it, right? So self-awareness, self-management. Now we're going to kind of segue into other people's emotions, and that's social awareness. So if we look at Officer Rosario going to this call where he's really dealing with the out-of-control teenager, which on the big scheme of things is like not a real big deal. He gets the upset brother. I think he fails to see the frustration that that brother is feeling towards the police department. It's not necessarily a personal dig at Officer Rosario, but he's taking it as one. And he's failing to see kind of the emotions that that teenage kid is having, and then basically falls into the trap of acting out on his own emotions without really thinking about it. So social awareness is your ability to recognize other people's emotions. And then lastly, how do we, I like to use the word manipulate people that might be super upset into not being super upset. So how do we control other people's emotions? So this is the name of the game here, where as a police officer, if we go to a call and I get there and I see that somebody is so upset that they're crying hysterically, they can't even formulate a sentence because they're hyperventilating, am I going to be able to talk to that person and get them to talk back to me with any magic words that I have? No. What do I have to do with that person? I just have to let time do its course and have them calm down themselves before telling them, hey, you got to control your emotions so you can tell me what happened. And just yelling at them like that, is that going to help? No, it's not, right? We just have to kind of just let them go through their course and calm down a little bit before they can start telling us what happened or what's going on. So it's important to understand people's emotions and then how we can kind of manage them, get them to the point to where we can effectively communicate. Is it going to work every time? No. In fact, it doesn't work every time. Like when we look at policing, some of the public may think that we can go into every situation and come up with a result where no force will ever have to be used because we live in this fairyland world where that might occur. But that's not true. It's absolutely not true. Because there's one person who controls what happens in an incident with police and the public. Who is that person typically? It's the person we're dealing with, right? Because if I'm trying to calm them down, but they're not calming down, and then let's say they do something that provokes us to kind of do a use of force, it's like, what do? We're not going to sit there and be punching bags. So we do our best to try to calm people down, but it doesn't always work. But there are good strategies to employ that we'll talk about here in a little bit on how we can get people kind of to chill out so that we can maybe get our message across and kind of continue on our daily business. All right, so this presentation here is more or less going to give you tools to kind of help operate not only in your professional lives like at work and stay safe, but also more importantly, I think, give you a skill set to operate in your personal lives to where you might be with loved ones who you actually care about protecting and keeping them out of danger, and potentially on top of that, giving you schemas to kind of deal with situations that you might encounter in your life and how to get through them. And we'll talk about why that's important. So first, let's ask a rhetorical question. Do you live in the mindset where it will never happen to you? This is where I can kind of gauge my crowd, and really most of the audience I've been instructing to in this course has been, I think, people that have a fair amount of life experience and haven't had like this upbringing to where they live in a life where they think nothing bad will ever happen to them, because I'm pretty sure that, much like myself, a lot of bad things have probably happened to a lot of you, and you have kind of an experience level that you bring to the table that you've already probably gone down the path of what we're going to talk about in planning for like contingencies of if something happens to me, how I can overcome that obstacle, whatever it may be. So oftentimes I'll go out into our public and I'll, for example, go to a business that's has some folks in it that maybe haven't been challenged very much in their life and not a lot of bad things have occurred, and that's where they might see this and they ask themselves, well, man, that's probably me. I don't really ever think about anything bad happening to me. The problem with that type of mindset is what might happen to that person if something does bad happen to them. What's that? They don't know how to react, right? It might be an adverse reaction in that they might just freeze and become a victim or whatever it may be, whatever the obstacle may be. So it's important to have some sort of a mindset that it can happen to me, whatever the it may be, but you don't want to like live under a rock and pretend like nothing bad will ever happen. So mental preparation. As police officers, we'll take brand new cops and we will train them in the classroom first. Do you think they retain a lot of the information and can apply it to the real world that they're going to go into? Not a whole lot, right? So what do we do to enhance their skill set? We actually take them outside, put them with all the tools they're going to have, put them in a cop car, get some role players and have them go through scenarios to where they're actually physically going through what they might encounter on the street. So that's like the best way to teach somebody how to do a physical skill or a scenario. The second best way, though, is the mental piece. So having somebody just mentally rehearse that scenario through their head and understand the moving parts is kind of second place to that actually getting out and doing it. So today, obviously, we're not going to go out and do scenarios, but we can talk about some scenarios in here and we'll kind of piece together some mental schemas for you folks. The two main concepts we're going to talk about: situational awareness and then schema development. Starting with situational awareness, can somebody in the class tell me what they think that is?
Being aware of the situation you're going to be walking into, what the mindset of the person is, what the environment is, being like prepared for what might come about, at least to the point of this is how this person might react in this situation.
Yeah, that's a very deep understanding of it. So not only just being aware of the surroundings and environment, but you're going to another level of understanding. Maybe there's some knowledge I might have beforehand going into this that could add to that situational awareness, like the person I'm meeting up with, or like the place or the area I'm at, what potentially could I encounter. So that's basically it. Situational awareness is one of those things that I will come up with some examples here that will prove is that we all know what it is, but we are pretty lazy when it comes to actually being aware of our surroundings, because guess what we do every day? It's like Groundhog Day for most of us, right? We go to work, we do the same thing, we go home, and we go to bed, and we just do it all again the same day. And when you get into that repetitive nature, often you start neglecting those small things in the environment, which could end up protecting you if you were to notice them and then kind of make a mental note of, well, if I avoid that altogether, I might keep myself out of a dangerous situation. Some examples that we'll talk about is like driving home from work. Like as a cop, I work till about 1:40 in the morning, and when it's time to head home, I'll make the 20-minute drive. I get to my garage, and if I don't fall asleep prior to getting into my garage because I'm so tired, I'll put that car in park, and then I literally sit there and will think, how did I even get home? I don't even remember the streets I took because I was like on autopilot. So in that mindset, do you think I have good situational awareness? Absolutely not. It's gone. It's done. And for me, in my line of work, that's probably not a great thing, because there are people out there that don't like the police and maybe want to target me because I'm in a police car. So it's important that I have good situational awareness. Another example, in a restaurant. If you're sitting at a booth with, let's say, 3 people, you get caught up in that conversation just within that booth, and you kind of neglect to see what's going on around you. For me, if I go to a restaurant, like I went to a restaurant with my family last night, where do I like to sit, do you think? Facing the door, okay? In a corner, so my back is, so I can't have anybody sneak up behind me, right? So these are those things that have been ingrained into me for 20 years, and it's an important conversation to have, but I don't want to turn anybody in here into what I am, because I seriously think it's like a disorder, what I have, because of all the years that I've gone around thinking that everybody's trying to hurt me. It'll turn you into kind of a weird creature. But for you all, challenge yourself a little bit, and if you go to a restaurant, just kind of scan the environment, like check out the clientele in there. Like, I'm not saying like profile people, but generally we can get kind of a good read on the room, see what type of people are in there, see if the entrances and exits, so that if something does happen, I have a plan to either make it to one of those to get out, or if somebody bebops in, I can see who they are and what they might be up to. So it's one of those little challenges that you can do every day that might maybe be the difference between you getting into a pickle and not. So this is kind of a twofold conversation. So as humans, we have behavior that typically comes across as being a predator type behavior or a prey type behavior. And think of nonverbals when I'm talking about this. So if somebody is puffing their chest out, their arms are to the side, and they might be voicing something very stern and direct as they're telling somebody something, those are signals of somebody being kind of a predator or being strong. Whereas on the flip side of that, we have somebody being weak or prey signals, where I might put my body like this, closed off, I might lower my tone. So these things in the world of like the criminal element, predators are always looking to victimize who? Prey, because it's an easy kind of win for them, right? So as you carry yourself through the real world, if you don't want to get targeted by like a predator out there, meaning like normally like a property crime type person, then walk around and make good eye contact and be confident with how you carry yourself. However, the flip side of this whole thing, and more appropriate for our conversation today, is if I go into an incident, or let's say you guys are out in your regular job, and you have somebody that's clearly upset. They're yelling at you, they might be pointing a finger at you. If you give off predator strong signals, what's likely to happen with that interaction? Yeah, it might escalate. So this is where we can use those weaker kind of prey signals to maybe de-escalate, tone it down as an attempt. And if it doesn't work, obviously, then our next best bet would be to just get out of there and not deal with them. Can you be rude? Can you be rude in your everyday work life? Is it okay to be rude to people when we're serving the citizens of Spokane? Generally not, but is there a circumstance where we could be rude to somebody? Yeah, give me an example if you can think of one.
Just walking away from them.
Yeah, so that could be perceived as being rude by the person if you just kind of walk away.
They weren't done with you.
They weren't done yelling at you, yeah. So what if it comes to our safety? Is it okay to be rude to somebody? Like you feel threatened by somebody, and maybe you can't walk away because you're cornered into a space or something. Is it okay to be rude at that point?
There's a difference between being rude and standing up for yourself, though.
Yeah, explain that. It's all right. You're exactly right.
Yeah. They might perceive it as rude, but if you have hard facts that they can't argue against, it's not being rude, it's just defending yourself, standing up for yourself.
Yeah. And I like to take rude and turn it into like direct. Just being direct with people, being blunt with them. Some people might perceive it as rude, but most do. But think of it in this perspective. It's like when it comes to your safety, do I really care about being blunt or direct with somebody and offending them? No, I really don't. It doesn't bother me. If it gets to the point to where I'm turning into Officer Rosario and I had every chance to leave and separate, but I'm finding myself taking more and more bites off that problem, then I might run down the path of where I might come into a problem later on. But for the most part, being direct with people for your safety, or just being direct with people and separating, walking away, is generally not rude. The rude part is if you take the parting shot as you're walking away. Like under your breath you say whatever you wanted to say to their face and they accidentally hear you or whatever. Intuition. Do you guys believe in intuition? And then, more importantly, what is intuition? Magic, yeah. A gut feeling. Yeah, something's off, something isn't right. So, understanding how our brain works is obviously beyond even the scientists that study brains, but when you look at what happens with the subconscious level of your brain, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there that we haven't identified yet. It's my feeling, my belief that within that subconscious, you're constantly taking in the whatever visual cues or other cues from the environment, and at some level there's this intuition piece that plays into it where you're getting these weird gut feelings, or the hair on the back of your neck stands up, or something is off, it doesn't feel quite right. So really, when we feel those types of things, do we need to listen to them? Yeah. There's a reason why we've kind of survived on the planet for as long as we have, and a lot of it might have to do with intuition, right? This video here, and I'm going to be a spoiler alert on this. This is a son playing a prank on his mother. But it's like straight up scary if I didn't tell you that, so I didn't want to traumatize you. What I want you to watch, though, is Mom's going to come out into the garage, and she's going to get something from the refrigerator, but I want you to watch her kind of body language and what she does. So if that's your son, what conversation are you having right now? Yeah, exactly. But it's kind of a cool illustration of what I think intuition is, or this like gut feeling, or this little thing in your environment that's giving you a warning sign. What does she do when she first comes into the garage? She does kind of a head check. Did you like where she looks, and then she just kind of goes back to where she's heading towards the fridge? What makes her do a head check, do you think?
Intuition.
She knew something was up.
She knew something was up, because how many times has she been in a garage? Probably a lot, right? To where maybe at that subconscious level, it's an automatic thing that she never really thinks about, she just does. But for some reason this time when she came out, something in that environment caught her eye, made her actually look, but it didn't quite fully sink in as to what it was yet. So she continues on what she's doing. She gets to the fridge, and then she does another head check, and then she kind of looks back, and then she does another one, and that's where she picks up probably her son coming at her with the tire iron. So it's a good illustration of that gut instinct, that intuition that kicks in, and it's hard for her to maybe take that initial glance and be like, whoa, that was weird, and like abort what she's doing and maybe go back into the house right away. But it's a good illustration on how it works. Now, we see her plan A. What was her plan A when she first picked up the threat coming at her? Get the heck out of there. And she did a really good job. She goes over to the door. She's trying to get in, but son's friend, in on the joke, had locked the door. But what was her plan B? She didn't have one, right? And this is where we'll get into eventually our schema development. And what was her response then without having a plan B? She froze, right? She melted to the ground and basically became a victim. So what should she have done? Yeah, like start throwing some punches or something, because it's at that point to where we can obviously tell what's going to happen if this was a real incident, not a prank, that it's, I got to start defending myself by fighting, right? All right, so real quick conversation on reporting crimes. We won't spend too much time. There's generally two types of things that you're going to observe in your everyday life, whether it be personal or professional. You're going to observe a cold crime, which means that there is no suspect there and it's not like currently taking place. Generally, that would be crime check 456-2233. And generally speaking, are you going to get a police officer there lickety-split for those types of things? No. You might not even get a police officer there depending on the call load. Examples of this could be like a vehicle prowling where you see a window broken out, there's nobody around, you don't know where the victim is, you don't know where the suspect is. That could sit there for a while depending on what else is going on in the city. Other types of things you might observe are these in-progress calls. And in essence, if you see something occurring like a domestic violence between partners, or somebody actively breaking into a car, or somebody actively breaking into a house, generally that would prompt a 911 call. And then it's kind of up to you on how you want to play that. None of you get paid to basically be crime fighters for the city of Spokane, so none of you have the obligation to stay there and be a witness and kind of get yourself involved with the situation. However, if you're in a safe place to do so, you're separated far enough away to where you're not going to be in any trouble. It doesn't hurt to just sit there and update 911, request to stay on the phone, so that as we're coming to that, we can kind of get updated information as to what's occurring, as long as you can safely do it. Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of activity and being out and about in Spokane, you see things, and I've seen people like slumped over steering wheels that obviously went somewhere to do drugs and slumped over. And who do you call in that incident? Because I don't know if it's like a 911 or if it's a 311 or what is that?
Most of those are actually like medical type calls, because it's people that are using heroin and that kind of nod off, and unfortunately some of them OD and actually will die. So it's kind of an emergency. So those can be 911s if you see somebody like passed out in a car. What will typically occur when you describe that, like person slumped over the wheel, you might get a dual response where the cops come with the fire department, because it could be like a DUI type thing to where we don't want them running off in the car, or it could be just a straight up heroin user that's out and they don't have any ability to drive that car because they're completely out. So yeah, you can call 911 for that. We're in kind of this weird time right now with policing and the new laws that came through. really prevent us from doing certain things, and that's kind of one of the bugaboos right there, the whole medical thing. Because is there a crime that is being committed with somebody passed out behind the wheel under the influence of heroin that's safely parked off the road? There's no crime with that. So it's really hard for us, and we'll do it, but we have to be really smart about doing it, because the legislatures basically said we cannot do really anything with that, especially not use any type of force against those people because they're not committing a crime. So it's hard for us to kind of go into that call, but we still will. It's just, we just have to navigate it pretty carefully. There's another thing here too, like if you ever are confused on, do I call 911, do I call crime check? It doesn't really matter. You're not going to get in trouble for calling one versus the other. So when in doubt, just call 911. So not a big deal. All right, so schema development. What do we think that is? I've kind of hinted at it a little bit. Preparing yourself. How so?
Thinking about how you would react for various situations, planning ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not saying the mom in the video would have ever thought of plan B, because that would be getting down a road that's pretty weird for somebody to be thinking about a plan for. Like if I go into the garage and somebody tries, mugging me with something, I'm going to first try to get away, then second try to, punch them by the door if it's locked. You might not have a specific plan like that, but a bigger mental schema she could have developed would be, if I ever get myself cornered to where I can't escape, I got to resort to throwing blows. I have to. That's my plan. And if she builds that schema, maybe it comes to life when that prank gets pulled. And it would have been funnier, because then her kid would have got popped in the nose. So schema development, exactly. Rehearsing these scenarios or what-ifs, making plans for future events. You always win when you're doing them. And again, like, water this down so you don't become like the obsessive, crazy cop that thinks everybody out there is trying to hurt them. But challenge yourself a little bit to where, if you're walking through the mall, what are some things that concern you sometimes in the mall? Yeah, like a mass shooting, right? Or somebody pickpocketing you or running by and grabbing your bag of goods. So how can we make schemas for those? And those are the things I'm talking about, where it might be with the mass shooting. I know I've received training in run, hide, fight, and I kind of do them in that order. And I might be able to get safe that way. And for the pickpocket person, maybe how you carry the bag. You're not just willy-nilly holding it with two fingers, but you might wrap it around your wrist. You're aware of your surroundings. If you see a sketchy crew coming up behind you, then you might change course, turn the other way, stuff like that. All right, so human response to stress. There's three. We are either going to freeze, we're going to fight, or we're going to flee. We kind of saw two of these occur with the mom in the video. We saw the flee as she's trying to get back into the house, and then we saw the freeze when the door was locked. When we're training people, and really police officers, what's kind of the most important one here? To preserve everyone's life and the sanctity of life, including the bad guy that's perpetrating whatever they're doing. Flight, right? Separation. Because if we can separate, it allows more time to kind of deal with the scenario. Because when it's face-to-face and stuff kicks off, there's not a whole lot of time to think of a bunch of different options on how to get out of that. So if we can create separation or flight, and it might not be I'm just fleeing and going to run away. It's just I'm creating enough space to now I can use time, distance, cover, and then deal with it a different way. What do I want to avoid at all costs? The freezing, right? The fighting is one of those that's just the last resort. If I can't separate, can't create distance, and somebody's right in my face, then I got to resort to the fight to preserve my safety. So most of you in here probably know what that's a picture of. Some of you might not. It's a Rolodex. They used to use them to store kind of crucial information on maybe contact info. But think of your brain like a Rolodex, and each one of these cards in the Rolodex is a mental schema you have developed sometime in your life. And it may be like a realistic schema that you've developed because you've physically been through something or physically practiced something. Every time you're out in the real world and something that it occurs, that some obstacle or bad thing might occur to you, if you can flip through the Rolodex, find a card to apply to that situation, generally speaking, your performance is going to be better because you're going to have something that resorts to either fleeing or fighting if necessary and avoiding that freeze. When we see people freeze, typically it means they have nothing in their brain to rely on or fall back on that can help them through that situation. All right, scenario time. So each one of you probably work, a lot of water department people here, correct? And then where else? What other departments? What's that? Wastewater. Okay. So when we talk about this scenario and we're saying somebody's tasked with shutting off the water, just put yourself in kind of a regular routine task you would be doing in your normal activities at work, where you're going to encounter a very unhappy citizen of Spokane, and we're going to call her Lisa. So you were tasked with doing something, and Lisa encounters you trying to, in this case, shut off her water, and she's going to come out and she kind of just starts giving you the riot act. Is screaming at you, yelling at you, and is very dissatisfied with what's going on. Has that ever occurred? Probably not. Yeah. Everybody's so calm and cheery when they see you guys, just like us. So how do we deal with Lisa? Nothing physical yet. She's just mad, and that's what she looks like. There's nothing, no bazookas in her hand or anything. How do we deal with her?
Listening to what she's upset about, like kind of seeing if she de-escalates on her own, like after she gets a little bit of her frustrations out, and then, you know, maybe after, you know, if she de-escalates, you know, you can, if she doesn't de-escalate, you could just leave and come back later, or you could try talking to her and trying to, you know, yeah, I understand how you're feeling, I understand you're frustrated, yeah, times are tough now, you know, just kind of trying to have some empathy for her situation a little bit, and sometimes help people diffuse.
Yeah.
So
you've given a couple of strategies. The first one is listening. Sometimes I have a hard time doing that because I'm impatient. But really, if you allow somebody just to voice their concerns, and yeah, it might be in a screaming manner, but as long as they're not swinging on you or going to advance on you, it might not be a bad strategy to kind of just listen to what is triggering her emotional response. That way you can have a better strategy at managing her kind of emotions. And if you can find the root problem of what she's dealing with, maybe you can come up with a solution, maybe not. However, she keyed on something else that's important. If your ability to listen and then come back with maybe a soft tone kind of verbals with her doesn't work, then are you paid to be there and be a verbal punching bag for somebody? No, so leave, right? We've had classes before that if they leave, they might come back at a different time when nobody's around and quickly shut off the water if that's what they have to do as a strategy, so to avoid that confrontation. But what other strategies do we have? Like, can we use?
Information that she needs to figure out her problem, turn the water off and leave.
Yeah, so here's some phone numbers. You can call these people at City Hall. You can call my boss. Here's his number, whatever it may be, right? Yeah.
So
So
that gives her what she needs, you away from the situation, and the job is done.
yeah. Anybody in the room gonna shut the water off in front of angry Lisa?
Yes. Don't sugarcoat it, guys. Yes.
So you were gonna say something.
No, I was just saying.
Yes. Okay. Let's say, what if Lisa's standing out on where the water access is and standing right in the way, and she's pissed and yelling and screaming? Are you gonna kind of bump her out of the way to get the water shut off? No contact. That's probably a good plan, right? We're gonna develop this scenario because this one's a little easy because you guys and gals probably encounter this every day. So we're gonna say that you decided you tried listening, you tried kind of soft talking her a little bit, she's still upset. It sounds like she requested to speak with your supervisor, so you go back to your truck, which is parked kind of out in front of the house, and you're gonna sit inside the cab as you call your supervisor to let them know what's up. and he or she is going to respond to the scene so they can talk to Lisa and maybe smooth things over. But as you're waiting there, Lisa is still super upset, and she comes over and jumps on the hood of your truck, and she's not the youngest and most spry of people, but somehow she has figured a way out onto the hood of the truck, and she is kind of banging her palm on the windshield, pointing her finger, screaming and yelling on how you're trying to, hurt her and her family because you're going to shut her water off. And you're currently on the phone with your boss as this is occurring. What do we do? Calling 911? Okay, that would be a good response. Videotape. So, yeah, so a segue on the videotape. The best thing that ever happened to policing, in my opinion, is in 2015, the Spokane Police Department decided to have all of their officers wear body cameras. Initially, do you think cops were super excited about that? No. Do you think they love them now? Absolutely. They're like, you wouldn't want to go out there without a camera because it disproves all the garbage that most of the people say. And yeah, it does catch some unprofessional and sometimes criminal acts by cops, but it's a better way to hold them accountable and deal with them and move on. But it is absolutely a good evidentiary thing to record somebody's ludicrous behavior, like Lisa here, when she's on the hood of your truck, so that you have a little bit of evidence on what you might eventually end up doing depending on what happens, right? Are we driving off with Lisa on the hood? No? What about just slow, maybe bump up on the lawn so we can shove her off on the grass? Probably not, right? So as you are waiting for the cops to come, so keep in mind when you call 911, it goes to kind of a 911 operator who then transfers it to either police or fire. Once it gets transferred to police, they have to kind of decipher all the information. Then they dispatch police to it. Just that in and of itself can take 2 minutes. And now the cops, depending on where they're coming from, it can take several minutes for them to get on scene. So you're kind of on your own for 5 minutes as Lisa's on the hood of your truck. She's still banging on the windshield. And then her son now exits the house, walks out to the street. He positions himself kind of right outside your driver's door window, and he starts kind of banging on the window, and he's pointing his finger, and he looks a lot like that gentleman there, somebody who would be a handful if he got his hands on you. It'd be a pretty good tussle. So what do we do now? Record him and eat a sandwich. Be cool, calm, and collected. Maybe. Yeah? What else?
Tell your super well, I guess you got off the phone with your supervisor. Get out the other door.
So get out the other door.
Stay in the truck and protect.
Yeah, so let's talk about both those. Like if you're super fast and you can think I can outrun this guy, maybe an option, get out the door and just kind of flee and get separation, distance. If you're not, if it looks like you can't beat that guy in a 100-yard dash, then maybe not a good option. However, being inside the truck, it is somewhat protected, right? We have our windows rolled up, but windows only go so far, but at least I know if a window does break, I might have the next plan of response that I might do, right? That's a good idea, and in fact, that's the first time I've heard that brought up in this class. So if you have other co-workers working nearby, you just get on the radio, they kind of come into the area. Not only may they be a good witness, but on the extreme side of things, let's say this dude breaks the window and is like grabbing you inside the cab, they might be able to come help pull him off or at least protect you that way as well, right? Are we going to call and update 911? Yeah, right? And to be honest with you, Lisa on the hood of the truck, yeah, you're going to get police there and it's going to be fairly urgent, but it's not going to be, it's going to be way more urgent once this piece comes in, like, yeah, now this dude's, now it's 2-on-1, I can't get out of my truck, I think the windows are going to get broke because this guy's pretty big and upset. It's going to get a little quicker response. So let's say you're sitting in the cab and you're eating your sandwich and you're remaining calm. And then all of a sudden he breaks the driver's side window out and he's now reaching in and trying to grab at you to pull you out the window.
I think that's a good self-defense.
So self-defense, what are you going to do?
Fight him off.
So maybe punch at him, swipe at his arms to push him away. What else can we do?
Drive away.
Drive away. So what about poor Lisa on the hood of the truck?
Speed bump.
Speed bump? Yeah. So here's where we have the conversation of you've come to the end of this to where one of two things has to happen, right? Your safety is now in imminent danger of getting, hurt by the son. And if you remain in the seat and just kind of do hand fighting, that's generally probably not a good strategy for keeping him off you because he's got all the mobility of coming in and out, and you're kind of stuck in the cab of this truck. Now, could you maybe scoot over and try the exit? Maybe, if you can do that and get away. However, if you're to where I can't really defend myself properly in the cab of this truck, maybe driving away would be appropriate because in the big scheme of things, whose safety is more important, yours or Lisa's or his? Who takes priority in that situation? You do, right? You're doing your job. You haven't done anything inappropriate. You haven't egged anybody on. You've tried to do all the right solutions to kind of de-escalate this situation. Now they got you backed into a corner. Now how I drive off, we might not want to do the old speed bump approach, but what's another way I could drive off that might help? Yeah. So say that louder.
Inching to indicate you're leaving.
Okay. And then on top of that, would it hurt if I said, I am going to drive off. I don't want you to get hurt. Get off the truck now. Would it hurt to say that while you're doing all this videotaping fancy stuff? It wouldn't, right? It's the same thing like in the police world when we're going to use force on somebody. Let's say I'm going to taser somebody. What am I kind of required to say to them before I taser them? Yeah, I'm going to use this taser on you, knucklehead, if you don't start listening to me. That way they had the warning. They knew what was going to happen if they didn't, adhere to whatever we were telling them to do. It's kind of very important. The verbal warning is super, super important for you if you plan on getting, potentially, because what's Lisa going to do when she flies off the hood of the truck? Yeah, she's going to sue the city. So think about putting your bigger picture case together on why you did what you did. You didn't have an option. No, all other options were exhausted. You advised them you were going to drive off. You did it in a slow manner as to protect Lisa the best you could, but you were protecting yourself in that situation. So think of it like that. Well, you changed it somewhat, right? Yeah. If he's got his hands around your throat, that's somewhat different. You might, first of all, you're not going to be able to really talk effectively, and it's more immediate, the danger, so you might not have a chance to give a warning, right? Yeah. The same reason in like the cop world, do we provide warnings every time? No, because stuff just happens. Like if somebody attacks me, is running at me, and I'm just trying to get the taser out, am I going to really think about, sir, stop, or I'm going to use this taser? Oh, wait, I don't have time for that, right? You're just doing it because of how immediate the threat is. So if you have time, yes, it's ideal. However, if the pace of that event is so quick that you don't, then that's your argument then, right? I didn't have time to do those things. I wanted to, but I couldn't. All right. Next scenario. So you are eating lunch. You're parked in your rig. Let's say you're in pick a neighborhood you would commonly kind of work in. And you see this person. He's kind of walking down the street, and he's doing the scanning the environment, looking around, and then he kind of walks up to this wooden fence that leads into this backyard of this residence, and he does the final look around, and then he pops up over the fence and kind of disappears towards the back door. And in your mind, you're thinking, holy crap, this guy looks like a total burglar. He just scanned the environment and is going to kick in that back door to steal stuff. And you're parked a good block away. He didn't see you, and you're sitting there eating your sandwich. What do? Call 911? What are we going to tell 911?
He was scoping the area before he jumped into the backyard and went for the back door. It's like I guess if you didn't actually see him enter the residence, like do you need to wait until you didn't see him go into the residence? He could live there.
He could, but like more likely than not, he's probably not living there, right? Based upon his activity. So this is where it's okay. Yeah. And that's important. I mean, a lot of time when we get calls, it's white male, 5'10", 180, wearing some jeans. It's like you just described 70% of Spokane, right? That we're going to encounter when we go to that area to look for that call. So yeah, describing in detail is important for us. You're sitting there eating your sandwich, you call this in, and you hit the nail on the head. Do we know if this is a burglary or not? We don't really know. It kind of looks like it might be. It's a suspicious person. This doesn't get like categorized as like a super high priority for the cops to come. So what's that? Yeah, just say DV, and it looks like he's got a gat in his hand, and then you'll get all the cops there in 5 minutes. So how long are you going to sit there? It could be, yeah. How long are you going to sit there waiting for police?
I'd stay there to update them.
But how long? 30 minutes?
You get paid by the hour.
Yeah.
Be paid more on the reporter.
Continue with your job, I guess.
Yeah, it depends, right? A lot of times, if it's super busy out, this might be categorized as like a priority 3. So it's not going to really get dispatched. It'll just sit there waiting for an available cop just to snag it off the screen through their computer. So you could be waiting a while, and sometimes if it's busy enough, that won't even get a response. It'll just, what we call officer time takes care of it. Because you'll get bored enough to where you'll leave, there won't be any refreshed information, and nothing happens, and it just gets kicked with no units available. So there has to be some sort of a schema developed for you folks on how long you want to invest in this. And I'd say if you're at the beginning of your lunch hour and you're in a safe spot to sit there and chill and watch if anything develops, then okay. But if you're now going outside your lunch hour, it's not your duty to sit there and watch. Just take off, and you did your job of reporting it. We're going to say, though, in this case, you're sitting there, you saw him hop the fence, you called 911, you told him what was up, and then you're continuing to kind of sit in that position you were, and you see him pop back over the fence, and now he's got like Santa Claus's bag full of goodies from the house, you're assuming, like he just, now you're thinking committed the burglary, and he's walking down the street away from you. What do? Could be, yeah, like
They kicked him out and needed his clothes.
it could be.
Update, call 911,
Yeah, we're gonna-
update him and tell him what direction he's headed, what cross street he's headed to,
Okay.
where he's on.
So updating 911 with direction to travel, if anything changed with his identification features. Yeah. So do we follow him? Nobody in here is going to follow him? I find that hard to believe. Some of you people in the back there are going to follow this dude. And if we do follow him, how do we do it? Yeah, a good distance. Stay separated enough to where if he does notice you following him, you can escape safely. Because the last thing we want to avoid is like him encountering you, being upset because you're snitching him out to the police because he thinks he has all the right in the world to commit burglaries in that neighborhood. So, good. A fairly straightforward, simplistic one, but the key here is safe distance. You can be a good observer and provide us information as we're coming in. So, the Risk Management Department of the City of Spokane has, in essence, proposed and come up with a strategy to deal with and address some of the safety issues that occur with Local 270 employees, meaning if you guys are out and about doing your job and you encounter an aggressive individual, there's certain protocol they want followed now as far as tracking those incidents so that they can protect everybody kind of with an umbrella approach to dealing with that and or provide appropriate training, somewhat like this, so that when you guys do encounter these aggressive people, that you have some sort of way to kind of navigate through it without getting hurt. That's the biggest kind of punchline there. So some of the definitions and examples they have is obviously if the violence emergencies, those are no-brainers. If those occur, you're going to be letting your boss know and paperwork's going to be getting done. Some of the other ones, they might just be like dealing with Lisa and she's screaming and yelling at you. You weren't able to shut the water off because you didn't want to continue that confrontation, so you get a hold of your boss and let them know, and then they fill out what they call this near-miss form, a close call event that had the potential to result in injury or damage. And in essence, this is a way for risk management to track all these incidents that occur. Some of the steps they wanted to reiterate is, first and foremost, your safety is the priority. So if you can, just get out of the situation. Like disengage, create distance, get away from the threat, the problem, or whatever it might be. Don't be Officer Rosario and dig your feet in and start tit for tatting with somebody. They also wanted me to relay, like, don't threaten the use of 911 against somebody, because that could be sometimes construed as an escalated kind of thing, to where, listen, lady, if you don't shut your mouth, I'm going to call 911 and the cops are going to come here and put your ass in jail. Like, obviously that would probably not be a solution to the issue there. It might escalate them more. So just create distance, call 911 if you have to, but you're doing it without them knowing it's like a piece of leverage over their head. Obviously reporting incidents to your supervisors once it's de-escalated, and then completing that near-miss form. I don't know where this sits. I haven't heard if this was official or not. I know that Matt Lowmaster from Risk Management was going to meet with Local 270 to see if this could happen, a contractual thing. I don't keep up with that stuff, but just be aware this is kind of out there, and it's for the protection of all of you folks and going forward, so that when we do deal with these folks that are not so nice to us, that we have a way to track it more or less, and how to kind of adapt and overcome and maybe shift the way we do things in order to keep each other safe. So that's kind of the conclusion of my demonstration for today. Is there any questions or concerns or thoughts? Awesome. All right, take care.